What is up, my aesthetic boys? It's Fresh, back with another video. Today we have a storytime episode of ProRevenge featuring Nuclear Revenge, a highly requested sub. I hope you enjoy. How I made the worst employer in the world lose a multi-million-dollar account. To be honest, the I in the title is not me, but a former colleague who does not have a Reddit account. We work together in the same ad agency. I will give my personal context first, and then write her story exactly as she told me. We worked together in one of the biggest ad agencies in the country. She was a director, and I was a manager in different departments. It was a global group, but honestly, it sucked. I quit because I was burned out. It had a Game of Thrones politics, and daily occurrences of both sexual and moral harassment. That place was the worst professional experience, and one of the worst personal ones I have ever had. Now, for the story. It is a long one. I was hired as an account director for a huge ad agency. Let's call it FFC. My account was one of the top 5 accounts in the agency and was worth at least 7 digits. My boss, the account's VP, was one of the worst human beings I have ever met. He was sexist, rude, and liked to play favorites. When I got there, as a young and okay-looking woman, I instantly became one of his favorites. He was married, by the way. One day, we left a happy hour together and he offered me a ride. I lived nearby him, so not overthinking it, I accepted. He made a move on me. I politely refused and left the car. After that, my life became a living hell. He would not include me in important meetings and then complain I didn't know the things that were discussed. My reviews went from 5 stars to 1. He pretended he didn't remember a raise he had promised. He would talk with my team and ignore me. The work, which was already hard, I worked 80 hours a week, became unbearable. I almost quit. I had a long conversation with the agency HR, which went nowhere because she was his personal friend. I even escalated it to the president, with whom I had a friendly relationship, and he said I was reading too much into things. One thing I did right, though, is that I had a great relationship with my client, so they were afraid to fire me. I had helped save the account, which was almost lost when I was hired. So they played a smart hand. They hired a girl who had worked with my client on his former company, with whom he had a friendly relationship with, to replace me. They then put me aside on a smaller account which was on the verge of being lost, so they could justify firing me when that happened. But then I got lucky. My original client got promoted and opened a marketing manager position under him. When I applied, he even skipped a few hiring steps. This was October, and I was to start on January. I asked him not to disclose to the agency he had hired me until I had the chance to tell them myself. The position would not work directly with the ad agency, and I no longer managed their account, so there was no conflict of interest, and he said okay. Honestly, he couldn't care less. I was planning on giving them my 1-month notice, required in my country, in November, so they could have time to find someone else. I was fired October 31st. It would have been the worst experience in the world if I cared. The VP asked me in his office to fire me. He said no one would believe me, that I would never find another job in the market, that I had ratted him out to HR, that I was incompetent, and all the worst things someone could have said. He sent me to HR to sign some papers and told me to leave the building afterwards. I recorded him. When I went to HR, the woman in charge sat me down and kept making snide comments about me not appreciating working in one of the biggest ad agencies in the world, that I could have been great. It was surreal. Being fired in my country grants people a fair amount of money. I would have received around 5 months' pay per the law. She wanted me to sign papers accepting that. I said no, and played her the record from the VP. She went pale because she knew that was a lawsuit, and also that the global team would not like it at all. I left that day and said I would contact them through my lawyer. Never said anything about the job lined up. The next week, I, my lawyer, my recording, and a bunch of other documents, emails, text messages, sat down with the agency to negotiate. I ended up with over 15 months' pay. Both parts signed an NDA, which included me saying I had quit. I then took a 2-month vacation. Told my new boss I had made a deal while quitting, but that I had not disclosed I was going to work for them. He said he would tell them himself, not to worry. Come January, and I started my new job. My boss tells me that since I was the one with the most experience in advertising agencies, I would be a consultant to the annual deals for all the agencies that managed all of their accounts. This included allowing new agencies to pitch for us. My boss, which didn't deal with FFC anymore, of course, forgot to tell them about me. No feeling in the world was better than entering the agency as a client. It was almost orgasmic sitting in a meeting to see their pitch and watching the VP's dumbstruck face when he entered the room. I was nothing but nice, made pertinent questions, and smiled all the way through. I ended up telling my boss in confidence what had happened. He authorized me to advise against the agency, said that if compliance knew about their behavior, they would lose the account anyway. They lost the account. They lost 3 other accounts in that same year. The whole leadership was fired. The agency closed. The VP can't find a job for his life. And I just got promoted. Posting again with a throwaway account. Nervous about sharing this one. I used to be a butcher/meat cutter. I was trained at a small mom and pop shop on how to be an actual butcher rather than just a meat cutter. I loved the career. Of course, if you intend on even getting close to a decent salary, you have to take your skills to a grocery store and work your way up the chain, or start your own successful business. I got a job at a chain supermarket and worked there for several years until I was offered the chance to run my own department. The hitch was they wouldn't bump my salary up for my promotion. So I didn't complain, I moved on to another supermarket. This one was fancy and had a real good reputation for being a nice chain. At this point, I want to let you know that I intend to keep this somewhat anonymous. Most of the naming and shaming has already been done, and this is 5 years in the past. This new supermarket only had 5 stores in my area. I worked at 3 of them during the 3 years I was there. I didn't have any real issues with this place until I was offered a promotion. Something you may need to understand is that each store had a meat department. Each meat department had a handful of meat cutters, an assistant manager, and a manager. Above the department manager, you had the store manager, but you also had a district meat supervisor. This guy's job was to go to each store every few weeks and see how things are going, and get with the department manager to work on sales and waste. Stuff like that. Due to our particular district only having 5 markets, our supervisor was also the manager of one of these markets. Let's call it Store C. When I was hired on, I began working at Store A. I bought a new house a little outside of town and moved to Store B so that I could have a closer drive. I liked everyone I worked with at both stores. I even liked the district supervisor, who I'll call DS. He was extremely friendly and outgoing. DS got a promotion which required him to move to another state and become that area's full-time district supervisor. He took it, and his assistant manager at Market C got a promotion to become the manager of that market. I was offered a promotion to assist, but I would have to transfer from Market B to Market C. So I did. Market C was a store that I had not been in yet, and my first week there was pretty strange. The new manager was on vacation, and I found out that this particular market would have 2 assistant managers, me and another guy who I'll call AM. Besides me and assistant manager, there were 3 other meat cutters. My initial impressions of the place were that it was the dirtiest meat market I had been in. You could smell our seafood case when you walked in the front door. The coolers were covered in old blood, and they had out-of-date products stacked all over the place. Now, I'm not usually an asshole, so I decided to wait until the manager came back from vacation and see how things go from there, because I may be seeing the results of a messy transition and it might not be representative of how the market is usually run. When the market manager came back, he asked me what I thought of the place. I told him that I honestly thought it looked dirty and that aside from the cases needing cleaning, some of the cutters were putting spoiled seafood in the cases and slimy tenderloins in the display cases. He seemed disappointed, but I wasn't sure if it was my opinion he didn't like or the state of things while he was away. He had warned me about the other assistant manager, AM, and told me that AM was a troublemaker, that the former manager, DS, told MM that AM was out to get him. Now, the manager was looking for reasons to fire AM. Are you still following? I told him that I would keep that in mind. The manager closed with me a few days and wanted to show me his methods of closing down the market for the night, which I thought was weird because I had years of experience doing this, but I'm not going to turn down a helping hand. MM's method of cleaning the machinery was to use no soap, no sanitizer, just degreaser and water, which is disgusting. I was also shown his method for accounting for waste. This company had a really good management information system which gave a manager all the tools they need in order to plan for sales and reduce waste. The only requirement was that you fed it the proper information. Proper procedure was to scan out waste at the end of the night. This way you can keep track of what wasn't selling or what you may be producing too much of. On the other hand, didn't scan out anything. He threw it away and made up numbers to input manually into the system. It doesn't make sense, but then he was able to fudge the numbers on the monthly inventory to make them look acceptable. Why? Out of all of this is one of the things I understood the least. It's so easy to do it properly. I do know one thing. He was taught this by our former district supervisor, DS. He told me as much. I felt I was in a real bad position. I didn't want to be the guy who just got here and stirred things up left and right. And I had also just bought a house and had a 2-year-old at home with another one on the way. I felt like I might actually be able to change the culture of this market a bit and get people to start doing things the way they should be. Not just my way, but the way the law and the company require us to do the job. Months go by and I didn't make much headway. Weeks and weeks of the manager talking crap about the other assistant or ignoring him completely in order to give me more responsibility. One day, assistant manager blows up on me. So we have a talk that night and I asked him what was going on, and he said he felt our manager was cutting him out in favor of me. I told him that I had noticed it too and asked him what was up between the two of them, and he tells me his story. He began working at that market about a year before me under district supervisor. Our current manager, was his co-assistant. Assistant manager's first week there was similar to mine. He saw how dirty the place was and also closed the market down with and realized that he wasn't using any soap or chemicals. He told me some other stuff, like seeing him misweighing roasts by stacking rolls of stickers on the scale along with the meat. So went and told the manager at the time, district supervisor. He told me that after that, they had it out for him. Of course, I had heard the other side of the story from and now it all made sense. My co-assistant saw many of the same problems I did and thought that DS would care. Instead, district supervisor told to watch his back, and they tried poisoning most of the store against him. For my part in this, I still kept to my goal of straightening out some of this mess. I would ask my cutters to do their job and get on a weekly schedule of looking for product going out of date and mark it down a few days in advance. I eventually found out that had told them they didn't have to listen to me because I was just an assistant manager. I began scanning out waste like we were supposed to, but I would come in from my off days and find a shopping cart of waste rolled back into the cooler, which would separate into prepackaged items that he would just toss, and meat we cut there which he would keep in the cooler. Seafood was a whole other problem. We would get cases of fish in, unwrapped, and the case of unwrapped fresh fish would usually have the sell-by date on it. They would never keep this information, like other stores, and would throw the dates away and put those fish in the case until they were disintegrating. On days I had to set up the case, I would do it properly. If it looked bad, I would print up a ticket, scan it out, and throw it away. I told that the fish wasn't selling well, and we should back off of certain varieties and fill the case out with kale, like other low-volume fish sections I had worked at. Nope. Well, one month we apparently had a bad inventory. Me and the other assistant were called up to the store manager's office where he asked us what was going on back there. So I gave him my perspective. I said that many of the guidelines were not being followed, we were over-ordering product, and we weren't throwing it away when we should. The store manager didn't seem to care. He told us that he was gonna blow the market up and didn't care where we landed, whatever the hell that means. But I left with a distinct impression that he wanted us to quit trying to fix things and just keep the numbers where DS and the manager had them. I reached out to former coworkers at the other stores and told them what was going on, and they said they had heard those rumors about this market for years. My cutters at this market were aware of it, and most of them got to the point where they wanted to fix things too, except for one of them. So I kept at trying to fix things. I would have quit, but this company paid more than I would have gotten at any other market, and I really couldn't afford to take a pay cut at the moment. However, my wife was floating the idea that I should become a stay-at-home dad once our daughter was born and just leave the place behind. But I didn't want to be a stay-at-home dad. For several weeks, our store manager would call us up into his office separately and yell at us or try to intimidate us. I told him, "You know, I've been here for over a year and never got the raise I was promised. You guys have never completed my training and want me to do things that I consider unethical. Just transfer me back to my old store and I'll step down." He replied that there were only 2 ways I could leave and that a transfer wasn't it. I took that as my options were to quit or get fired. I even contacted HR and asked to be moved, but they talked to the store manager and they denied me. We even showed the HR manager cases of out-of-date meat that had been frozen and put in the freezer in order to keep scanning it on our monthly inventories. Fortunately, I'd been recording every yelling session he had me present for. It's not something I would have normally done, but an old boss told me to document everything and cover my ass. So I did. I recorded video showing piles of out-of-date meat, video of fish disintegrating in my hands. I recorded audio of every time I brought the conditions up to my boss, his boss, and the store's manager's assistants. It all amounted to a few hours of them being completely aware of what was going on and either threatening my job or telling me to leave it as is. Over Christmas that year, I had 2 days off and talked with my wife again about the option of being a stay-at-home dad. I told her I would only do it if I could use the time in order to go back to school. We agreed on that, and I contacted the local news investigative team, and I turned over all the video and recordings, pictures, etc. that I had. I had also had them talk with AM, who backed up everything and who also had his own examples. They talked to meat cutters at the other stores I worked at to hear the rumors about this place, and then they did a background check on me. They began sending in undercover shoppers who would show up when I wasn't there and buy spoiled fish and meat. I also covertly marked some meat that had been vacuum sealed and relabeled by our manager for months on end, which the news ended up buying. They sent all of this product out to be tested at a local university, and most, if not all of it, had thousands of times the safe level of staph, E. coli, and something else that I can't even remember right now. And I went in for 2 on-camera interviews as they wanted a face to put with the investigation. The investigation took around 3 or 4 months, and during that time we found out that our company was being bought out by one of the biggest supermarket chains in the area. Oh well, the trigger had already been pulled. In April, the news aired a 3-day multi-part expose. The store had been suspicious for a few weeks because the news van had been outside shooting B-roll, and the reporter had contacted corporate for comments on the story. I walked into work after the first day, and it was the weirdest thing in the world. Some people wouldn't speak to me. Others came up to me when no one was around and thanked me. Some people wondered why I would continue to show up, and I did it because of 3 reasons. I have huge balls, I was in the right, and I wanted the severance package they were offering employees once all the stores closed due to the buyout. I had to work till the middle of June, as that was the date all the stores would close and start converting over. The company had told the news that I was making it all up. Of course, they had no idea the extensive amount of evidence I had gathered. I had a lawyer offer to represent me pro bono, and besides being a nice guy, he was also 3/4 pitbull. He threatened to sue them for defamation, and they had to retract their statement and say that this was a one-time occurrence that they were not aware of. I received 2 death threats from people who were associated with the manager. The police took care of them. They moved me back to store B, where I was able to work a bit easier. Then they had me spend a full day locked in a room with the district manager and a loss prevention officer who, I don't know, he questioned my story, but my story has never changed. And the next day they told me I didn't have to come in anymore, and I would keep all of my pay until the official closing date, keep my benefits package and severance package. My department manager, MM, was demoted to assistant, and from what I've heard, he moved to another state working for the same company. In fact, he moved to the same area his old boss DS was running. The store manager resigned before the stores shut down. In fact, his store closed before all the other ones because they had a double your money back, no questions asked guarantee on meat sales, and people were bringing back whole tenderloins they had in their freezers. They lost a lot of money and decided to close that location down early. The store manager was rehired as a department manager when that location opened back up under the new company. And most of the employees remained unaffected other than the buyout required everyone to reapply for their old jobs, and everyone got a massive pay cut across the board, though that had nothing to do with me. As for me, I'm on my 4th year as a stay-at-home dad. I graduate from university with a degree in IT this May. I have a 4.0 and will be going into a master's program next year, which will be the last year before my girl starts kindergarten. I never wanted to get anyone fired. I just wanted to do a good job, not be forced to do things I didn't consider right. But I stand up to bullies. I don't let people threaten me, my family, our well-being, or anyone else I care about. I have been hesitant to write about this experience because it's in the past and I came out on top of everything. In a way, that makes me feel as if the other shoe never dropped. Over the past several years, I think of this often, and it was one of the hardest things I ever had to do. I hope that putting it down on paper helps me finally quit thinking about it. I wonder sometimes if I did the right thing, that maybe I should have let it go. But it is what it is now, and now you know. Now, this is the kind of revenge story that I very much can get behind. Incredibly well thought out, well planned, well executed, and all within legal limits. Everything he did was just getting these guys to pay for the problems they had already caused. He didn't cause them undue stress or something undeserved. He simply got the proper people involved to investigate and shut down this disaster of a meat department. Major props to you, OP. Major props to you. Mess with my sibling and I will decimate your life from 10,000 kilometers away. And laugh. My sibling was visiting me from our country of origin for my wedding. They had flown for many hours, all as a teenager, in order to represent our family at the small wedding planned. I'll post my nuclear revenge on abusive ex-spouse if there is interest, but not relevant for this. My sibling, to be called Darling Sibling, or DS, is the sweetest and kindest human to exist. They had been dating their teenage sweetheart, henceforth known as Piece of Trash, or POS, for about 2 years. I hated him from the moment I met him. He didn't treat my sister right. He was unfaithful. He was already on a very short leash in my mind. Anyway, DS and I went sightseeing, went out clubbing, shopped, I got married, blah blah blah. It was great. Until one morning, I wake up to find DS in tears after being up all night long. I come to find out that POS had dumped her over Facebook and admitted to cheating on DS and was already Facebook official with POS's cheating partner. Remember, DS was a teen, so the Facebook official thing was really a punch to the gut. Needless to say, I lost my mind. DS was due to fly home the next day. POS wasn't even grown enough to break up with DS face to face. First order of business? Go into the city, get absolutely wrecked, and cause some mayhem. Accomplish that mission, get DS on a flight back home, and begin plotting my destruction of him. Now, POS was not only on a short leash with me. He was on a short leash with his school and his mother for his usage of pot. I knew this, and I used this. It was his last year of school, so I wanted to ensure he would be expelled and ruin his chances of any decent university. I also wanted to make good on his mom's promise to kick him out should he get caught with pot again. 2 birds, 1 stone. And that 1 stone would be a brilliantly crafted email detailing his drug-related transgressions and where to find pot in his car, which would be parked on school property. And did I ever kill both birds? My plan worked smoothly and brilliantly. DS called me freaking out, asking if I had done something as POS had blamed him for it. I feigned innocence and said, "I'm all the way 10,000 kilometers away. How could I have done anything? I'm waiting until my next visit home to beat his ass." POS was thrown out of his mother's home and had to live with his abusive and horrible dad. He was expelled from school. He did not finish and was not able to start university on time. I cackled for ages. I'm laughing now, years later. I did finally admit to dear sibling that it was me. DS about slapped me, but they did laugh. And for those wondering, DS has the career of their dreams and is in grad school and is marrying a wonderful human who worships the ground they walk on. As for POS, last I heard, his life is in the gutter. I wish I'd done more. Thank you to everyone who watched this video. Be sure to subscribe for more daily Reddit content. Drop a like if you liked the video, and I will see you all tomorrow.